Our next presentation this afternoon shall be on the topic, the impact of AI on financial services. I will now introduce our speakers for this session. Mr. Duran Humes is the CEO and founder of Plato Alpha Design, a Bahamian software consulting firm. The firm specializes in driving digital innovation for business. With over a decade of experience as a software developer, Duran has developed a reputation for transforming client ideas into profitable, cost-effective, innovative business solutions. Duran's expertise has led to the emergence of Plato Alpha as a leading firm, assisting their clients in increasing revenue and addressing operational inefficiencies using customized software solutions. Please join me in welcoming Duran Humes. Mr. Onassis Nottage is a founder, managing director, and chief marketing officer at RSLT Lab BV, an artificial intelligence consultancy firm located in the Netherlands. The firm specializes in large language model solutions. He holds an associate's degree in engineering physics and a bachelor's degree in mathematics from the University of the Bahamas. He's incredibly smart because math was challenging for me. He attained a master's degree in big data and artificial intelligence from the University of Barcelona. Onassis is an emerging leader in industry, designing and developing AI solutions in Brazil, Spain, and Germany. Please welcome Onassis Nottage.
Yours fine. Can you, okay, yeah. All right, so just for clarification, the way that we're going to do this today is going to be similar to a fireside chat in the sense where I just came back from a few travels, and so I have some questions for Duran. I'm not sure completely what's happening inside of the Bahamas, and he has some questions to me, to ask me about artificial intelligence and what's going on internationally. So you are going to be invited to listen into this conversation, and at the fourth lap, we're going to invite anybody to come to the microphone and ask any questions that you like. Just for clarification, this conversation may end up getting very esoteric, and so please do not feel afraid to come and ask whatever questions that you like. Thank you.
So may I interject here, Duran, just before you begin, because I know that the tech minds in the room, you gentlemen are very highly intelligent and sophisticated, but for those of us that do not know much about AI, can you just begin, preface by giving us an overview of what is AI generally?
That's exactly what's going to happen. Yes.
Yeah. So the topics of discussion for this afternoon is going to be on the introduction of AI, AI regulation, and then lastly, use cases for financial services. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, to kick off the conversation, Onassis, what is AI in simple terms? Explain to me like I'm 5.
Artificial intelligence is a combination of computer science and mathematics. Both of these are completely important. And this focuses on teaching a computer or a machine how to perform tasks that require human intelligence. Whether that be me filling out a form and based off of the inputs, it classifies whatever it is that I have, whether that be me taking a photo of the crowd and me connecting that to a computer vision model and it's being able to count how many persons are currently inside of the crowd, whether that be me recording a conversation and based off of that conversation, I pass this through a large language model and the large language model summarizes and gives key points on what the conversation was that we spoke about. These things require human intelligence, and therefore, if I'm able to train software to do the exact same thing, that is considered artificial intelligence. And one of the things that I find in my travels is that when I go to these countries, if I go to Panama or Brazil, Colombia, the Netherlands, Sweden, doesn't matter, I get access to data, but this is from a private company perspective. And that's not where the fun things are. The fun things are usually from a public sector perspective, but because I'm not from these countries, it's essentially kind of like a boring problem for me. And so my question to you, which is what I really would like to know, what exactly is going on within the Bahamas in terms of any technical challenges from the public sector perspective, say with the Ministry of National Security or Ministry of Tourism? Do you face any particular technical challenges or have experienced any?
100%, right? And I'm sure, as you know, the primary issue is data, right? Because if any of you do know about artificial intelligence, is that data is the primary thing that you would need, right? You start out, how do you collect the data? What sort of data you already have? How clean it is? And what can you actually glean? What sort of reports you can get from it? Now, as you know, us in the Bahamas, basically everything is manual, right? Especially when we're talking about government. No shade to any government workers in here. But in terms of your data, it's garbage in, garbage out.
Yes.
So once you start off with good data, clean data, only then you can actually jump into any sort of AI use cases to start getting relevant reports, et cetera, et cetera. Now, with that as well, I want to jump into this, and I'm sure there's at least, I'd say 80% of the room that are probably thinking, will AI take my job? Does anyone in the room like to raise their hands if you think AI will not take your job? Oh, we got some confident people. The confidence, I love it. But Onassis, that is a very, very real fear that a lot of people have. But will it actually take their jobs? I'm curious.
In artificial intelligence, you have two different branches. Well, multiple branches, but we're going to focus on something called machine learning. In machine learning, you have supervised machine learning and unsupervised machine learning. We're going to focus on unsupervised for a second. Within unsupervised, you have clustering, and you have something called association rule learning. You may not be familiar with the name, but you are absolutely familiar with what this does. So what association rule learning does is, think of you going to the grocery store, and you pay for a lot of groceries, you go to the checkout, and they give you your receipt. Now imagine 100 of those customers, and so now I have a list of 100 different receipts, right? What a priori does is it takes a look at this entire list of transactions, and it says, hey, persons who bought this also bought that. Persons who ordered these items also ordered that items. We recommend this movie to watch because you've watched these movies. We recommend this drink because you have ordered this dish. And what they, in advanced data analysis, one of the classes that we took, they mentioned a story about a mom and pop shop that used the same a priori method within their store. And what they did was, what they found out was that persons who bought diapers also bought a 6-pack of beer, right? And so what they found out, just doing some research, was that, oh, well, what essentially happened was the dad on his way home, the dad gets a ring from the mom. Mom tells him, hey, boy, we ain't got no more diapers. Go inside of the store. The dad picks up the diapers. He says he's tired of this. He goes to the next section. He finds a 6-pack, and then that's what's happening. And so what they did with that information was like, okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put the baby diaper aisle next to the refrigerators. And once we do that, we're going to give them 10% discount on a pack of beer if you give us some diapers, right? And I say this to say that artificial intelligence, we're trying to figure out what the point of that whole thing was, right? I'm trying to say that artificial intelligence, the whole point of it is not to replace jobs. The whole purpose of AI is to optimize processes. That is what artificial intelligence is meant to do. And yes, all of you who raised your hand to say AI can't replace your job, I promise you, I could probably make one today that could do the job that you're doing. But, and I'm getting to the point now, but you don't essentially have to worry about that because of the state that we're in. Yes, you can make an AI that can understand healthcare. You can make an AI doctor, but who's going to go to that hospital? I can make tomorrow a large language model that understands 10 of the most top CEOs inside of the world and can give you all of that information. But how many of you are going to follow them on Twitter? You know, we can make an AI bot that can understand plumbing and electricity and masonry and carpentry and things like that, but how many of you are going to let them build your house? We're capable of making these things now, but it's not really a black and white thing of if it's going to replace your job. It's more of kind of like a gray thing. And so just really understanding that the main true potential of using artificial intelligence is to assist in optimizing processes. I do have a question for you, though. You do? I actually do have a question for you. So before you go back to me, after me saying all of this, do you think that as a software developer, AI is going to replace your job? Do you think I could do something tomorrow that's going to replace Plato Alpha?
Hopefully not. But in the future, yes, I would say so. Primary reason is that in software development, right, there's a few different steps to get from start to finish. You start out by gathering the requirements, figuring out what the end goal is, right? And then you go step by step by step until you have the final product. Now, to give you an example, we have a software product, our HR and payroll software, TriBlock HR, right? That customers send different requests for enhancements and such and so forth on a daily basis. Now, ultimately, what I would like to do is I would like to take whatever that request is, plug it into my AI, it then goes out, modifies the code, reviews it, tests it, and then push it up to the customer's environment, where there's no one else involved. And eventually, we will get there. And there's also this comedic joke, I'm sure you heard of, that us programmers and AI developers are working ourselves out of a job. So eventually, we will all be unemployed. Yeah. So on that, we now want to move on to regulation, which I think is a pretty important topic. That's a bit of a sticky subject, you know. How do you think a country can regulate AI from what you've seen in your travels?
Artificial intelligence is an industry agnostic kind of field to be in, meaning that it doesn't matter which industry you can say out loud. I can probably think of an AI solution straight off the bat that could be useful within that industry. And the reason it's industry agnostic is because artificial intelligence is powered by something that everybody essentially has, and it's data. Without data, there is no artificial intelligence whatsoever. And so I'm going to take you on this step-by-step thing so you can see exactly what I'm seeing. When it comes to country-level information, I like to analyze artificial intelligence from a PESTLE perspective, right? PESTLE, P-E-S-T-L-E, or E-L if you're feeling American, focuses on the political, the economical, the social, the technical, the legal, and the environmental aspects of what can essentially make or break a business, right? And so when you take a look at what countries are doing, I think it makes perfect sense to see exactly what these leaders are doing in each country, because they're trying to use artificial intelligence from their advantage. As an example, let's take Europe. Europe focuses a lot more on laws when it comes to artificial intelligence. They released the European Union Artificial Intelligence Act last year, I think in April. This is about 400 pages long, believe me, I've read it. And it pretty much classifies artificial intelligence based off of risk. So you have low, medium, high, and then absolutely prohibited risk. The United States focuses a lot more on artificial intelligence from a technical perspective, but also from a political perspective. I think it was either this year or last year, under the Biden administration, they released the Chip and Sciences Act, which pretty much gave companies like Qualcomm and Intel, a lot of funding for fabricating these chips, because chips are going to be the next best thing. And then in South America, I think, focuses on artificial intelligence from more of a social perspective. So they think of they also create laws, but laws that are kind of like a symbiotic relationship where the people depend on the AI and the AI also depend on the people. And this is just a side note, this is what I feel as if the Bahamas could really excel at in terms of not spending a lot of money because AI can get pretty expensive, but yeah, these kind of things. And so when you take a look at, after listening to all of this, when you take a look at what these countries are doing from a business perspective, I now know that, hey, if I know that sorry, this is my glasses. If I know that in Europe they focus on the EU AI Act, and in one of the things that are prohibited, one of these things are facial recognition. So there are certain types of facial recognition that you absolutely cannot do within Europe unless you want to face like a $5 million fine or something like that. So they have that as absolutely prohibited. They also have social classification as prohibited. And so my specialty is in convolutional neural networks, so that is computer vision. And so since I know that if Europe doesn't focus on this and China does, China would get my money in terms of research. Simple as that. And so looking at these different countries and what they're doing, I think it would make a lot more sense for them to focus on AI from these different perspectives, so that they can garner more support or garner more businesses and funding and whatnot within that particular country in terms of regulation. So this is how most countries are pretty much being regulated. The most so far is just the EU AI Act, and I think Canada released something recently, the IDA, Artificial Intelligence Data Act or something like that. But those were so they have those happening. But once again, I have no idea what's going on in the Bahamas, so it would be good for me to kind of understand. The most I found out that I read a couple of months back was, I think it was the Digital Transformation Act or something, the EU LAC agreement or something like that, that they had in Bogota.
It was kind of something, but it wasn't necessarily super specific to AI. You know, I would have seen, at least regionally, that Trinidad is looking at adopting the EU's policies. So I guess we'll see how that goes. Yeah, but at least here in the Bahamas, I would have heard our PM a couple of weeks ago when I was at the Canto conference speaking about AI regulation. So hopefully there are some talks happening to where we can get some decent AI regulation, because primarily trying to control something like AI seems like it's a bit of a difficult task. And what you would have just said is better for us to focus on one specific vertical within the PESCO kind of lineup, and social would be better for us versus, let's say, political or legal, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it's cheap too, because AI, like you said, is pretty expensive. Yeah? We'll kind of get into that in a minute, but what I now want to talk about is something a bit more fine-grained, right? Something a bit more relatable to home. What do you think incumbents, or well-established companies, I should say, can do to protect themselves against new players in the field that come out of the gate using AI? So I've been in business for 30, 40, 50 years, right? Well-established, well-connected. How do I now defend myself against these new players?
There's a quote by a Spanish-American philosopher, Jorge Santayana, I think his name is. It says that those who have failed to study history are doomed to repeat it. And I think this is the perfect example of what is currently happening now with artificial intelligence. I thought it was great that only I knew about what artificial intelligence was. There weren't much people inside of it, and now everybody is inside of the field. Now I know how doctors felt during COVID. This is how I feel kind of now with the Facebook doctors and things like that. Yeah. So what I think is important to understand is to not really listen to the noise in the market. How it was in the dot-com bubble, if you didn't know about it, it was like in the late 1900s, 1995 to 2000s or something like that. And what they kind of did was they invested in a lot of businesses that focused on making internet-based sites and whatnot. So they spent a lot of money inside of those. One of the major players that came out of the dot-com bubble was Amazon. And I could see the exact same thing happening here. A lot of businesses are investing heavily to rush into artificial intelligence solutions and the like. And it's fine to be curious to know about artificial intelligence and whatnot, but these businesses will end up repeating themselves and may end up going bankrupt, primarily because we don't invest heavily in research and development for some reason. Research and development is very inexpensive and relative to spending money on software, right? I think it's important to understand that before artificial intelligence, there is data science. Before data science, there is data warehousing and business intelligence. Before that, there's data engineering. Before that, there's data architecture. And before that, as the foundational, exactly, the foundational principle of everything is data governance. And just to give it a really quick summary, data governance is just the rules, the processes, and most importantly, the accountability when it comes to data management principles. And so understanding these things, bringing in different persons from each department to come together and understand exactly what we need to do to move forward within these different 13 pillar steps into getting to artificial intelligence as opposed to just rushing in. These kind of things are important to have. It's boring, yeah, but it saves you a lot of money inside of the long run. And when it comes to product development, using design thinking methods, empathize, research, define, measure, all these different things, it's important to have, because you're not going to spend much money initially, and the process itself could be boring, but you can determine right before you start that cutoff point with spending all of your money, which one is going to fail, which one is going to maybe succeed, and so you get a list of maybe 10 different ideas and whatnot. So that's really my method to think about things. I would like to hear your thoughts in terms of what do you see from a software development perspective on when it comes to competing with AI, financial, tech companies?
So are we talking about more from the product side or just from, in general, dealing with competitors? Okay. So in our space, in the software development space, we are not necessarily competing directly with AI, not necessarily, at least not at this point. Because once you start competing against the computers, it gets a bit sketchy. But in terms of, let's say, advising the business, we always start from the use case. Make sure that we try to come up with some valuable use cases, because it doesn't make any sense you going down the path of creating something, whatever that may be, even outside of programming, that at the end of the day, no one will use. All right? So we start from the use case to make sure that, hey, at the end of the day, once we've built this thing, whatever it is a widget, application, website, whatever it is, that persons would actually find value in it. All right? Once we start from there, everything else is pretty straightforward. Now, another thing that I would like to know is that when it comes to, let's say, dealing with businesses that are fearful of using AI, how would you go about encouraging a business to now not only use it themselves, but also empower their people to actually utilize it?
AI will not replace your business, but another business using AI will. Oh yeah.
That one's deep.
What I need you to really understand is that things adapt, things change. Before artificial intelligence, there was Google, and people made noise about Google. Heck, people even made noise about the encyclopedia when it first came out. And so at any particular point in time, you're going to see noise in the market. I think, and it goes back to the main point that I mentioned earlier, if we, well, me and persons within my field, we use artificial intelligence more ethically and the way that it's intended to be, in the sense where it's supposed to be used to optimize processes, then instead of being a job replacement, you now have another tool that you're going to use within your job, as opposed to replacing another person. I personally just don't really believe in replacing people with artificial intelligence. I don't know if it's because of the school that I went to or just something in general, but I just really... I got morals. I got a little bit of morals. Don't tell nobody. But yeah, that's just what I personally believe in, and a lot of persons may not believe in those kind of things. But the thing is that artificial intelligence can get really expensive depending on the solution that you have. And so this is really a good thing to think about. If persons want an AI solution that can replace a particular job, then you have to train that AI model. And not only do you have to train that AI model, but you also have to continuously go through machine learning optimization tools and things like that. And those things are expensive. They can get very expensive. And so in those particular instances, that's what I really think that businesses should understand. We usually, and this goes back into saving money as well too, you do research to try and identify exactly what is the pain point within this organization. And then from that particular pain point, then we start doing some research methods. We start taking a look at our data management maturity to identify what kind of AI solution is essentially needed to fix that problem, right? And so I guess my question to you would be, what are kinds of tools that you think that you would recommend to businesses within this particular cohort? What kind of tools do you think you'd recommend to financial institutions and whatnot, just to be able to use in general? Me, and just to give you an idea where this question really came from, I don't use AI tools. I actually make them myself, and so I'm not entirely the best in prescribing what the AI tools and solutions are going to be. But more persons know this question better than I would, so let me know.
So who in the room has used ChatGPT before? Curious. Oh my, somebody got two hands up in the back there. But ChatGPT, that's a very, very useful tool, right? And that's what really brought AI mainstream to the general public because it made it accessible. Whereas before, a guy like Onassis would have to have made a special application for you specifically. You know, whereas now your ChatGPT for free, or I think it's $10 a month or something like that, you get access to something extremely powerful. Now, I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day, and he told me about a problem that some of you guys have in the financial services industry related to account feeds. Do any of you know about that? Account feeds in the context of getting the...
When you say problem for whom? The consumers or because there's a lot of banks represented in the room, so the fees aren't a problem for the bank.
No,
the banks like the revenues. When you say
hold on.
Be a bit more specific,
I know, banks love fees. May have been my accent, but I said feeds, F-E-E-D-S.
Feeds.
Account feeds.
I heard fees.
No.
You know?
I thought he was trying to touch the money.
No. Well, I mean, but those feeds, in terms of getting the data from a different account or a different bank, to be able to now do your analysis, do your reporting, your compliance, etc. That, from what I hear, a lot of you guys do that manually. Either that or you outsource it to another company that probably does it manually as well, instead of using AI software to now help you with the fraud detection, as well as your compliance, your KYC, your AML, etc. So having software like that and having a specific AI model, large language model, which is just a giant database dictionary at the end of the day. It's like your encyclopedia, but for your business, all right? Having something like that that can look at all those transactions whenever you actually get those in, at the end of the day, end of the week, whatever it is, having that language model look at those transactions and point out with a, let's say, 90% surety that this transaction is fraudulent, that helps. So instead of it taking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe even a month to review certain accounts that are very high transactions, you can do that in about an hour.
Duran, I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a moment because I know a number of the professionals in the room we know earlier engaged in compliance monitoring, transaction monitoring, for example. So you began by saying AI, one of the fears in industry is that AI will begin to replace people's jobs. But conversely, on the other side, while you could build a large model that could detect fraud on someone's account, there's still a level of personal interaction and sort of knowing your customer, knowing your client, knowing the client's transaction risk profile, which in my mind, respectfully, these brilliant minds in the room can't all be replaced. I think you can build the highest, most sophisticated model. How do you balance the need to advance in the AI space versus the considerations that come with an actual human person on the other end of that platform that actually knows and understands the individual client?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So here's a use case of what we had to work with a bank in the Netherlands that I can't disclose the name of. So in, I think, February or March, I was in a Salesforce convention in California, and they beautifully described 3 different stages of large language model solutions, right? There is the prompt engineering. I think a lot of you should be familiar with that word, prompt engineering, where you just write down a description of what to tell ChatGPT, and then it gives you the breakdown. Then you go into a next level of it. This is called a knowledge base. So this is when you upload like a file or a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet. You show this to the large language model, you give it your prompt, and then it gives you what the answer is. And then the final level, which is what we recommended to this bank, it's called a co-pilot. So there is information that you would not necessarily give to an artificial intelligence model to work with. And one of these things is customer chatbots. So you can't allow, at least in the Netherlands, you can't allow an AI chatbot to communicate with another customer. So what we said was, okay, instead of having the bot communicate with the customer, let the bot communicate with the customer representative on behalf of that customer. So you essentially have 2 screens up, just to give you an example. One screen is coming from the customer, the next screen is coming from the chatbot. When the customer writes down any information, the chatbot takes this information and provides you with 2 options, well, 3 options essentially, to give back to that customer. It gives you the first 2 options of what to prescribe, and it gives you an option to just cancel it. But when you choose either of these 2 options, it doesn't go directly to the customer. It still goes inside of your chat, and you edit this information. It gets the customer information, it gets the customer data, it gets company-sensitive information or whatever have you, for you to be able to proofread, so you don't have to write any of this information. And then once this gets your approval, then it goes to the customer as another bot, and this is called a co-pilot. And this just really goes to show about the social aspects of artificial intelligence, more like, what's it called again? Where the persons depend on the AI and the AI depends on the people. This is the best primary example that I could really give to show you how that is supposed to work. It's not there to replace people, but it's there to assist you in your position, enhance positions, and assist in the development of optimizing any kind of methods that you would have inside of the organization.
And also to add on that, I see we're at 7 minutes, so I'd like to do Q&A
We're
afterwards.
a bit constrained for time, I
All
think, but if I would just invite you to have your final thoughts, and just so that we can open the floor for 1 or 2 questions before we move on to the next.
So I'd also like to add on to that, AI is not meant to do 100% of your job, at least not at this point, but I'd still like for you to adapt going forward into the future. It can do at least 80 to 90% of your job, right? So that some of us, like myself, can scroll on TikTok for a little bit longer while my job is getting done. But that's the main purpose of it. It's meant to assist you. Like Onassis said, that's one example, one use case as a co-pilot. You can also have a co-pilot that, again, goes back to fraud, sifts out majority of those transactions and gives you a probability if this transaction is potentially fraud. Because with the AI, I can pull in information from anywhere in the world. If there are certain world events happening and certain transactions, certain money is moving certain places, based on whatever is happening in the world, whatever information I give the AI, all of that comes together, and in an instant, it gives you an answer. Right? So that's the beautiful thing about it.
Well, thank you both. You're both clearly very passionate about AI, and I think it will take, quite a few of these informative sessions to garner the support or really the knowledge that the general population does. So I want to thank you both for joining us this afternoon and for sharing your insights. Thank you both. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. We will open the floor for a few questions. May I please ask, if you do have a question, to come forward to the mic so that everyone in the room can have the benefit of your query. Not all at once.
Don't be scared now. Any burning question that you may have had? Expert here.
Good afternoon. So my question is more societal than maybe technical. Most of the discussion has been on whether AI would replace our jobs. And you spoke about it optimizing those jobs. But really, I'm an attorney. It may take 3 lawyers to work on a specific matter to complete it based on the number of hours needed. But if it optimizes my job so much that I could do it myself, because certain tasks can be done by AI, I don't need the other 2 attorneys. My question is, you spoke about the symbiotic relationship in South America, the way they use the AI. Have you seen any of this type of approach in Europe or the US? My question is whether that could become their approach, because you know how companies, big companies and people with money control most of how we do things in the world. That would be the best way, the symbiotic relationship, because I could see a case where the profession may not go away, but the number of people in the profession becomes so much less because AI optimizes the job that much.
Mm-hmm.
Well, firstly, before I hand it over to Onassis, I'd like to say that I would think you guys would want to build more hours, not build less.
But if you're the employer, then you have to pay more people. So you rather cut costs.
There is a company, I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but it made the news, and maybe one of you may know what it is. But they created a customer service chatbot, and once the chatbot was created, they laid off 700 employees. I can't remember the name. It made my blood boil. I particularly didn't really like exactly what was going on with that. Matter of fact, a part of me knows that it's something that it's capable of doing, but yeah, what I'm getting at though, yes, you may feel this way, of course I may feel this way as well too, but as I mentioned before, these different countries would usually focus on AI from more of a pastel perspective. When I mentioned South America, the reason I like to focus on South America a lot is because they focus on it from that particular social perspective. The United States and China, they're 2 sides of the same technical coin, right? So just for an example, the United States focuses on research and development, while China, I see, focus a lot more on research and application. And so the US may push out a lot of research papers. You would see Facebook pushing out a lot of research papers on LinkedIn, all of these different papers coming out. And then within China, as an example, they would essentially focus a lot more on using these research papers and creating something that is actually practical, something tangible for them to be able to use. There are, of course, some companies, I'm not going to say that they don't focus on social artificial intelligence solutions, because just about every country focuses on that as well too. But just being a devil's advocate, I would really just focus my effort and energy on the country that would allow me to do the thing that I want to do the most, in the sense where if I really want to focus on social artificial intelligence solutions, then I would just work on getting, country data from South America, so they would have those things available. I would not go against the grain in terms of when it comes to doing that. I would just, really for me, I would just move to a completely different location. I like to say this, like what one country won't do, another one just will.
I do know that we have 3 questions pending, but I do apologize. We're just going to take perhaps one more question, as we need to transition to the next presentation. But I do invite you to meet with Duran and Onassis. I'm sure that they will be free to hang around for a bit afterward, so that you can ask your questions of them. I do apologize. So we'll just take one more question, please, before we move on.
All right, so pleasant good afternoon, everyone. All right, so basically, in a perfect world, AI would make us a lot of money, make our jobs very easy. And I noticed you mentioned some things about laws in place to prevent certain things from happening, like the AIDA, if I think is correct. But if the creation of these programs and stuff in collaboration with AI is at the discretion of the person that's creating these programs. How exactly do we safeguard against things that happen in the future? For instance, not for instance, but if I commit a crime, yeah, I may do the time for it, but the reality of it is the crime has already been committed, the damage has already been done. So how do we kind of safeguard against that, aside from the laws?
Well, I would just say one thing about the laws is that everything is extremely greenfield right now, meaning that it's new for everyone. So no one really knows exactly where this thing is going, but we'll have to wait and see what the future holds. Now, as it relates to safeguarding outside of the laws, that heavily depends on the morality of the person, because you have bad actors, as they call them, out there that are doing things like deep fakes, which I'm sure are something that you guys in your industry will face when it comes to KYC and compliance. You already have the basic, let's say, fraudulent documents, someone grabbing a PDF, changing a signature, changing an amount, and sending that off, trying to get it through. Those are basic fraud, right? But you have the more advanced stuff to where someone can take my face from the same presentation, make me say something completely different, post it on the internet, sponsor it, and I'm sure you've probably seen some of those ads on Facebook already, right? It's not difficult.
You could do it in 10 minutes.
Exactly. There are tools out there that can help you do it, surprisingly. Well, not surprisingly. Everybody got to make a buck, eh? But that's my perspective.
Yeah, so one of the things that I've learned is that the law follows 10 years after innovation.
Sorry?
The law follows 10 years after innovation.
Not in all instances, but go ahead.
It's not exactly 10 years, but you get the point. This is a perfect example would be with Facebook when it comes to data and whatnot. Facebook has been collecting data for quite some time, and it's only recently where they started getting cracked down on their data collection and whatnot. And so how it is, I completely forgot your question.
The ethical, how do you safeguard against the ethical sort of breaches from the person that's creating this?
Oh, yes. So, right. So you can see a perfect example would be Brazil right now. I don't know if you saw on the news, but Brazil completely banned X/Twitter, and Elon Musk. No, they banned it entirely. The only way that you can access Twitter now in Brazil is through a VPN. And they can track if you go on Twitter using that VPN, and you will get fined, I think, $5,000 or something like that. They did that recently. They did the same thing with Meta as well. And they were saying that, well, Elon was saying that the reason for this is because they were trying to prevent, freedom of speech and things like this, right? Freedom of speech and things like this. But in reality, they just didn't want Elon Musk to collect Brazilian data, and that's the main case. The same thing with Meta and whatnot. And so that's pretty much it. I'm finished.
Thank you. So
intense.
please join me once again in giving a round of applause for Onassis and Duran for their very insightful presentation. I would like to encourage you both, because you both touched very early on the lack of regulation or legislation, and we do have some regulators in the room. And I want to encourage you to partner and offer your expertise to the regulators to assist in the development and the evolving nature of this industry, because it is a highly technical subject that will require the support of industry professionals such as yourself. So thank you both.